The Zorath's initial victory had been swift and overwhelming, but the tables were beginning to turn. As their fleet advanced through Earth's atmosphere, they'd made the fatal mistake of assuming that humanity would break beneath the weight of their firepower. They had expected Earth's military to collapse immediately under the invasion, but they hadn't counted on one thing: human resilience. While the Zorath wreaked havoc on Earth's cities, tearing through defenses and forcing millions to flee into underground bunkers, the global leaders were far from defeated. Behind the scenes, as panic spread across the globe, a team of Earth's brightest minds worked tirelessly. The United Earth Federation, UEF, an international coalition formed to defend the planet in case of alien contact, quickly mobilized the only weapon humanity had against the seemingly unstoppable alien force. The dreadnoughts, humanity's last line of defense, had been kept hidden for decades, built in secret under the very surface of the moon. These gargantuan warships were a testament to Earth's ability to do the impossible. Designed to be the ultimate counter to any invader, the dreadnoughts were equipped with highly advanced energy weapons, reinforced shields capable of withstanding even the most powerful Zorath blasts, and tactical AI systems that allowed them to adapt to any combat scenario. As the Zorath fleet continued their bombardment, the first of the dreadnoughts, the Prometheus, erupted from the moon's surface. Its massive engines flared to life as it soared into Earth's atmosphere, a towering figure of sheer power and might. The sudden appearance of the dreadnoughts was like a sudden surge of hope to a planet teetering on the brink of destruction. The Zorath had no idea what was coming. Their commanders, arrogantly confident, dismissed the dreadnoughts as little more than a nuisance. But they soon realized their error as the Prometheus unleashed a devastating volley of energy blasts, ripping through the Zorath's leading warships. It was an unprecedented display of human might, a weapon of such force and precision that even the Zorath, accustomed to dominating weaker species, were stunned into hesitation. The battle that followed was brutal. The dreadnoughts, once hidden in secret, were now Earth's primary weapon of war. One by one, the massive ships appeared from beneath the surface of the moon, each one a floating fortress armed with weapons that could decimate entire fleets. The Zorath, despite their technological advantage, were forced into a retreat as they realized that Earth had just revealed its hidden strength. Yet, despite their setback, the Zorath were far from defeated. They were ruthless, their thirst for conquest unquenchable. A counteroffensive was inevitable. The true battle for Earth and the galaxy was just beginning. The dreadnoughts, with all their firepower, might have just delayed the inevitable. But humanity had already proven something important. They would not go down without a fight. When the Zorath arrived in the galaxy, their reputation preceded them. They were an ancient, war-hardened species with a brutal track record of subjugating world after world. Their ships, vast and heavily armed, were unmatched in firepower, and their warriors were legendary for their ruthlessness. The Zorath saw themselves as the galaxy's rulers, above all others, and with their overwhelming numbers and technology, they had every reason to believe they were invincible. Their strategy was simple: crush any opposition before it could grow into a threat. When the Zorath came to Earth, they assumed it would be another easy conquest, a primitive world, isolated on the edge of a lesser star system, with no real means to defend itself. They had encountered numerous species with similar weaknesses. Human civilizations were fragmented, their technology outdated, and their military forces laughable at best. It was just a matter of time before Earth's defenses were obliterated and its population enslaved, as had happened with countless other worlds. The first wave of the Zorath assault was nothing short of overwhelming. Their armada arrived without warning, deploying massive dreadnoughts capable of decimating entire cities with a single blast. In the first hours of the invasion, Earth's military forces were caught off guard, struggling to mount any meaningful defense. Humanity's best efforts were futile against the onslaught of advanced Zorath weapons. Their superior tactics, far beyond Earth's comprehension, shredded the world's defenses. But what the Zorath didn't understand What they grossly underestimated was humanity's resilience and ability to adapt. Earth's leaders, battered and bruised, realized that they could not fight the Zorath on their terms. To win, they would need to think beyond the traditional strategies of war. They would have to use the very traits that had allowed humanity to survive so long on Earth: resourcefulness, tenacity, and most importantly, unity. As the Zorath advanced, they made a fatal mistake. They underestimated humanity's capacity to evolve in the face of adversity. Earth's scientific community, previously spread thin by years of budget cuts and political red tape, quickly united in the wake of the invasion. Military strategists and engineers, long siloed from one another, began working together with unparalleled cooperation. Within months, human ingenuity began to shine, as scientists reverse-engineered captured Zorath technology, and engineers modified Earth's weapons systems with innovations that would have been unthinkable before the invasion. The human spirit, long thought to be a weakness by the Zorath, became the galaxy's most unexpected weapon. As Earth's dreadnoughts were swiftly constructed, each ship a masterpiece of human ingenuity, combining Zorath technology with human innovation, the tide of the war began to turn. The Zorath, still arrogantly confident in their superiority, continued their push, unprepared for the rise of a power they had never seen before. Earth's military might, honed by desperation, and driven by an unyielding will to survive. They had underestimated humanity, and now they would pay the price. The Zorath's mistake was clear. They believed their superior numbers and firepower would be enough to crush humanity's resistance. What they didn't expect was how quickly Earth's military and engineers adapted to the overwhelming challenge. In the face of what seemed like inevitable defeat, humanity's ingenuity emerged as their greatest weapon. As the Zorath retreated to regroup, Earth's military leadership knew they needed more than brute force to overcome the invaders. While the dreadnoughts were humanity's greatest asset, they were not without their limitations. They were powerful, but they couldn't be everywhere at once, and their sheer size made them vulnerable in certain tactical situations. What humanity needed was something more subtle, more creative, something that could tip the scales in their favor. Humanity's strength lay in its ability to improvise, and that strength was now on full display. The first major breakthrough came when Earth's scientists and military engineers managed to reverse-engineer a piece of Zorath technology captured from the wreckage of their ships. The Zorath's shields, nearly impenetrable to most weapons, were brought down by an innovative new energy pulse, something completely unexpected by the invaders. The energy pulse interfered with the Zorath's defensive systems, causing their shield arrays to short-circuit and disabling them temporarily. This new technology gave Earth an edge. With their shields vulnerable, the Zorath's warships could be destroyed with concentrated fire. Earth's forces began to mount a series of precise strikes, hitting the Zorath's weaker points, hull sections, engines, and weapons, systematically dismantling their fleet. But humanity didn't stop there. Recognizing the need for more than just offensive tactics, they also focused on disruption and deception. Using Zorath technology combined with their own, they developed stealth systems capable of rendering dreadnoughts and smaller ships invisible to enemy sensors. The first successful test of this cloaking device sent shockwaves through both Earth's forces and the Zorath. The humans' ability to adapt became their defining trait. No longer reliant on sheer strength alone, they began to fight a war of strategy, using intelligence and cunning to offset their lack of numbers. The Zorath, despite their superior firepower, had no answer for these unconventional tactics. As Earth's forces continued to sabotage Zorath supply lines, cripple their command centers, and ambush their fleets, the invaders started to grow frustrated. Meanwhile, as Earth scientists continued their work, a new weapon emerged from the chaos. They developed a weapon that, when deployed in the heart of the Zorath's forces, would disrupt their entire fleet's communication networks, sending their ships into disarray. The weapon, known as the Blackout Pulse, was set to be humanity's trump card, a single blow to cripple the Zoreth's coordination and command structure. In the midst of it all, Earth's commanders, pilots, and engineers worked together seamlessly. It was a collaborative effort between all branches of humanity's forces, something that the Zoreth could never have predicted. As Earth's forces gained ground, the message was clear. Humanity would not fall quietly. The Zoreth had underestimated them, and now they were about to pay the price. As the war against the Zoreth escalated, Earth's unexpected resistance began to attract the attention of other alien species. The galaxy was filled with oppressed civilizations, many of whom had been under the Zoreth's cruel rule for centuries. These species had long suffered at the hands of their tyrannical overlords, and now, seeing humanity's sudden rise and resistance, hope began to stir in the hearts of those who had been crushed beneath the weight of the Zoreth's empire. At first, it was small, isolated acts of defiance. A handful of alien warships, once part of the Zoreth's fleet, broke ranks and made their way to Earth. These ships carried defectors, fighters, engineers, and leaders who had escaped the Zoreth's iron grip. The Zoreth's hold on the galaxy was beginning to show cracks, and Earth was becoming the epicenter of a rebellion that no one had anticipated. The first diplomatic envoy arrived from the Crescent people, a species of warriors with advanced, if somewhat primitive, technology. They had been enslaved by the Zoreth for generations and had long yearned for a chance to rebel. Earth's military leaders welcomed them as allies, and soon the Crescent warriors were fighting side by side with humanity, training in the use of Earth's dreadnoughts and advanced weaponry. Their presence brought valuable combat experience and additional manpower to the human resistance. But it wasn't just the Crescents who saw the opportunity for freedom. Soon after, emissaries from the Zoreth's neighboring worlds arrived. Worlds that had been under Zoreth control for centuries, their populations oppressed and subjugated. The first to come were the Iridians, a technologically advanced race with a deep knowledge of energy weapons and shielding systems. They, too, had suffered under the Zoreth's reign and saw in humanity a glimmer of hope, a hope that, for the first time, might lead to their freedom. One by one, other species followed suit. The Velrathi, a race of sentient insectoids, brought their superior knowledge of biological warfare. The Thrixi, a race known for their expertise in espionage and sabotage, pledged their support as well. And the Xandorians, a nomadic people with unmatched skills in starship engineering, offered to assist in building and maintaining the growing fleet of rebel ships. Each new alliance strengthened Earth's position, and soon a full-fledged galactic coalition was born, united not by the desire for conquest, but by the collective will to overthrow the Zoreth and free the galaxy from tyranny. The formation of this alliance marked a turning point. The Zoreth, once confident in their ability to crush any rebellion, now found themselves facing not only humanity, but an entire coalition of liberated peoples. The balance of power was shifting, and the Zoreth were forced to reevaluate their strategy. As Earth's forces and their new allies coordinated more advanced strikes against Zoreth-held territories, the Empire began to fracture. Its once immense military stretched thin across multiple fronts. With each victory, the Galactic Alliance grew bolder, and the Zoreth's once uncontested dominance seemed increasingly in doubt. The rebellion had begun with a single, unexpected act of defiance, and now it was a movement that spanned the galaxy. The Zoreth were no longer invincible. The tide was turning, and the war was far from over. The Zoreth, humiliated by the sudden rise of the Galactic Alliance, found themselves caught off guard. They had spent centuries dominating the galaxy, and the rise of humanity and their new allies was an affront to everything they had built. Now, with their power waning, the Zoreth were forced into a corner. They had to act quickly, or risk losing everything. The Zoreth High Command, once confident in their superiority, issued orders for a full-scale counteroffensive. The invaders knew that if they didn't crush the resistance now, the coalition would only grow stronger, and the rebellion would spread further. They could not afford to let the Galactic Alliance gather its forces and gain even more ground. The first phase of the counteroffensive was brutal. The Zoreth deployed their most advanced warships, massive dreadnoughts, bristling with weapons of unimaginable power. They focused their efforts on reclaiming key systems that the Alliance had liberated, pushing back with terrifying force. Entire fleets of Zoreth ships descended upon the now protected worlds of the Galactic Coalition. The massive ships unleashed torrents of firepower, burning entire colonies to the ground in mere hours. Earth and its allies were forced to retreat as their military forces regrouped to strategize a defense. The dreadnoughts, once a symbol of humanity's strength, were now engaged in a fight to protect their borders. The Zoreth were relentless. They had studied humanity's tactics and learned to counteract many of the surprise maneuvers that had previously worked against them. The once hidden cloaking technology was now being detected, and Earth's newly developed weapons, while effective, were beginning to be neutralized by Zoreth countermeasures. In this moment of vulnerability, Earth's commanders understood that victory would not come from brute force alone. They needed a new plan, a way to strike at the heart of the Zoreth war machine. The war had reached a pivotal point, and the success of the coalition now relied on outsmarting their enemy, not just overpowering them. Meanwhile, the Zoreth's new tactics were showing some successes. They utilized their massive technological advantage to launch massive spaceborne assault squads, targeting the weak points in the Galactic Alliance's newly formed defenses. They struck at the heart of the Coalition's infrastructure, bombarding critical shipyards and communications hubs. The war was no longer just a fight for planets. It had turned into a race for resources and logistics. For the first time since the beginning of the war, Earth's forces were faced with the crushing realization that they might not win by simply holding their ground. The Zoreth had learned from their previous mistakes and were no longer underestimating humanity. With their fleets scattered and their alliances stretched thin, Earth and its allies were forced into a grim reality. They had to unite more than ever before if they had any hope of survival. The Zoreth's counteroffensive had made it clear the war was far from over. The invaders were no longer just reacting. They were adapting, evolving, and fighting to maintain control of the galaxy they had long thought to be theirs. For humanity and their newfound allies, the cost of victory would only grow steeper from here on out. The Zoreth had reasserted their dominance, but the fight for the galaxy was still very much in play. The Zoreth had struck hard and fast, and their counteroffensive had taken a heavy toll on Earth and its allies. The Galactic Coalition, once a unified force of determination and hope, was now on the brink of collapse. The Zoreth's relentless assault had shattered several key Alliance strongholds, and the remnants of humanity's forces had been pushed back to Earth itself. For the first time since the invasion began, the Coalition was forced to retreat into defensive positions. The war was no longer a battle for territory. It had become a desperate fight for survival. Earth's defenses were stretched thin, and the once dominant dreadnoughts had become targets of the Zoreth's renewed offensive. Despite the incredible power they wielded, the dreadnoughts were not invincible, and the Zoreth had found ways to bypass their defenses, targeting their weak points with precision strikes. The warship's energy shields, once thought impenetrable, were now slowly failing under the barrage of Zoreth weaponry. In Earth's capital, a somber mood hung over the war councils. Military leaders, generals, and scientists gathered in the underground bunkers that had once been thought to be the last line of defense. The Zoreth were closing in, and the time for any further strategic withdrawal was quickly running out. Earth had held on against all odds for months, but now it was a question of whether humanity had enough strength left to make one final stand. In this moment of crisis, Earth's leaders turned to an unexpected solution: an all-or-nothing counterattack. Humanity's engineers had spent weeks developing a new weapon, a final ace in the hole that could either turn the tide of the war or ensure Earth's utter destruction. This new weapon, codenamed Excalibur, was a colossal energy cannon designed to harness the combined power of Earth's remaining dreadnoughts and every surviving ship in the Coalition fleet. The Excalibur was humanity's last hope, an energy beam so powerful that it could obliterate a Zoreth dreadnought in a single shot. However, using it would require every remaining ship in the coalition to channel their power into one singular strike. The risk was enormous. If the attack failed or the Excalibur misfired, it could destroy everything within the blast radius, including Earth itself. But there was no choice. Humanity's leaders understood that the survival of the planet hinged on this desperate gamble. As the Zorath approached, preparing for their final push to eliminate the last bastion of resistance, Earth's forces prepared to launch their desperate counteroffensive. The Excalibur was powered up, its massive cannon ready for the ultimate shot. All ships in the fleet began to converge, each one feeding power into the weapon's core, knowing that they were about to make the most dangerous and decisive strike of their lives. The Zorath fleet was unaware of what awaited them. Their ships, despite their immense firepower, had no concept of the weapon humanity had developed. It would be a battle of endurance and willpower, Earth's final stand against an enemy that had underestimated them from the start. As the moment of truth drew near, all eyes turned toward the stars. Earth's fate rested on a single, overwhelming blow, one that would either break the Zorath or spell the end of humanity's struggle for survival. The moment had arrived. Earth's final defense, the Excalibur, was primed and ready, but the stakes could not have been higher. As the massive Zorath fleet loomed just beyond the horizon, humanity's forces gathered one last time, putting everything they had into this one final desperate act of defiance. The dreadnoughts, already battered from earlier engagements, had been reinforced and fueled with every remaining ounce of energy Earth could muster. The coalition fleet, with all its remaining strength, was fully aligned to channel their power into the Excalibur. The weapon, a towering marvel of human ingenuity, had been designed to concentrate every last ounce of energy from the combined fleets of Earth and their allies. With a single shot, it could pierce the heart of the Zorath's invincible dreadnoughts. But the risk was immense. If the weapon misfired or was intercepted, it could mean the end of Earth's resistance, and possibly the end of the human race itself. On the bridge of the Prometheus, the flagship dreadnought, Captain Rebecca Lyle gripped the control panel with white knuckles. Her heart raced as she looked out at the vast expanse of space where the Zorath fleet was closing in, its dark shapes growing larger by the second. The crew was tense, every person aboard aware that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. Target locked. Excalibur is ready, a voice called from across the control room. Begin the channeling process, Captain Lyle ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos raging within her. The countdown had begun. Across the fleet, every ship, every ally, was feeding energy into the weapon's core. The hum of power surged through the ships as the deadly beam began to charge, ready to fire. The Zorath, unaware of the magnitude of the weapon they were about to face, prepared to launch their final assault. Their ships, massive and foreboding, opened fire with overwhelming firepower, launching waves of energy blasts and missiles. The blackened space was filled with the glow of destruction as they aimed directly for Earth's fleet. Captain Lyle watched with intensity as the screens flashed with warnings. The Prometheus was taking damage, minor hits, but enough to feel the weight of the assault. Her crew, focused and determined, worked in unison to maintain control. The Excalibur would not fire until every ship in the fleet was aligned and ready. They could not afford failure. 10 seconds to firing, the weapons officer announced. The Zorath ships were closing in, their weapons already targeting the heart of the coalition fleet. Earth's fleet had to fire now, or be torn apart. 5 seconds, came the urgent call. The final countdown felt like an eternity. In the silence that followed, time seemed to stretch endlessly, each moment a weight on their shoulders. Then, just as the first Zorath salvo was about to strike, Captain Lyle gave the order. Fire! With a deafening roar, the Excalibur unleashed its fury. The brilliant focused beam of pure energy erupted from the cannon, cutting through space with the force of 1,000 suns. The blast hit the nearest Zorath dreadnoughts, and in a single instant, the ships were reduced to nothing but debris. The weapon's sheer power cascaded through the Zoreth fleet, cutting a path of destruction in its wake. The Zoreth fleet, stunned and unprepared for the force of the Excalibur, was torn apart. Massive warships were reduced to charred remnants, and smaller vessels were vaporized in the blink of an eye. For the first time since the invasion had begun, the Zoreth were on the defensive. The final strike had succeeded. But as the debris of the enemy fleet scattered across space, Captain Lyle knew the battle wasn't over. The war had only just shifted in humanity's favor, and the Zoreth, though reeling, were far from defeated. Earth had won the day, but the war was far from finished. The Excalibur's devastating shot had torn a massive hole through the Zoreth fleet, but the battle was far from over. Earth's fleet, though victorious in that moment, was battered and bruised. Many of the dreadnoughts had taken significant damage, and the few remaining ships of the coalition were struggling to regroup. The Zoreth had been dealt a severe blow, but their will to conquer was not easily broken. As the remnants of their fleet fled into the dark void of space, the question remained, what now? The immediate aftermath was chaotic. The coalition had won a decisive battle, but the war was far from won. The Zoreth, though retreating, still held control over many star systems, and their empire remained vast and powerful. Earth's forces had delivered a crippling strike, but they had not eradicated the enemy. The victory had bought them time, but time was not infinite. Humanity's leaders gathered once more, this time in the War Council's now famous underground chambers. The mood was cautious, yet hopeful. The Excalibur had proven the strength of the human spirit, but the road ahead was unclear. Earth had held its ground against an empire that had once seemed invincible, and yet, as the dust settled, there was a dawning realization that this victory had set the stage for a far larger and more complex struggle. "We've done the impossible," Captain Lyle spoke up during the council meeting, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into her face. "But we cannot let our guard down. The Zoreth are wounded, but they are not defeated. We must be prepared for the next phase of this war." There was a consensus among the council. Earth and the Galactic Alliance would not allow the Zoreth to regroup. While the coalition was still reeling, the victory at the Excalibur had sparked something far greater, an unshakable belief that the galaxy could be freed. This was not just humanity's fight anymore. It was a galactic struggle. The newly formed coalition of species would need to rally together, unite in ways they never had before, and take the fight directly to the Zoreth's strongholds. Across Earth, people began to emerge from the darkened bunkers and shelters. They saw the remnants of their world, the ruins of cities, the damage left by the invasion. But they also saw something else: hope. The long months of fear and suffering had forged a new unity among humanity. They had faced annihilation and yet had survived. They had repelled an alien empire that thought them insignificant, and now they were not only rebuilding their world, they were rebuilding the future. The Galactic Alliance, once a patchwork of species from all corners of the galaxy, now stood stronger than ever. The Crescians, Iridians, Velrathi, and others, who had once been disparate in their struggles, now had a common cause. The Zoreth may have retreated, but their empire was crumbling. With each passing day, more and more of their worlds began to rise up, inspired by the example of Earth's courage. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive. It was how they would shape the future of the galaxy. Earth had proven that it could stand against the greatest threat the universe had ever known. But now, humanity had a new challenge ahead: to unite the galaxy, lead the charge against the remnants of the Zoreth Empire, and ensure that the age of tyranny was over. In the wake of the battle, the galaxy stood on the precipice of something new. The Zoreth's empire had been shattered, but their ambition was still alive. Earth, now the heart of the Galactic Alliance, had become the symbol of defiance, hope, and unity. The war was far from over, but the dawn of a new era had begun.